Now, I've been around the block once or thrice on the Steam marketplace, and I've grown a particular fondness to the vast amount of indie games that are thrown on there. But for some unconceivable reason of my brain probably hating itself, I gravitated towards the roguelike genre as my primary means of entertainment. Which is particularly odd because the roguelike's basic structure on paper is just something that I should find absolutely putrid. Sounds pretty boring when you describe it as playing the same game over and over again for hours at a time with slight changes every time. But hot diggity dog, have I managed to grace my fingertips upon some of my favorite games in this genre. I played it all. I played Dead Cells, I played Enter the Gungeon, and I've also played the Risk of Rain series. And in all of my years of wasting away my corneas at this computer screen, I have never seen an indie game series as baffling as the Risk of Rain series. Risk of Rain 2 was the first one that enticed me with its 3D procedurally generated worlds and intensively coordinated progression. Seeing the gameplay of the later game of this thing just had adrenaline pumping furiously through my veins. So naturally, like any student swimming in debt and seeing a nice 50% off on the Steam summer sale, I slapped that thing right onto my Steam library, and you know what? I gotta say, it's pretty nice. So after losing about 30 hours to this set of ones and zeros, I started looking around for a worthy replacement of this masterpiece. And after pondering it for a little while, I noticed that there was a big fat 2 in the title of this masterpiece. So with all that said, how about we talk about the colossal failure on par with my midterm exams? That is Risk of Rain 1. So Risk of Rain 1 was a game developed in 2013, developed by Hopoo Games. And it's basically just a platformer that weirdly mixes Metroidvania elements and roguelike elements. So basically what happens in this game is that you crash land on this planet and you have to fight your way through some procedurally generated enemies and move from level to level after killing a boss on each level. Crash landing on this planet is a character of your choice with 4 unique skills to help you combat the enemies on this world. All the while you're collecting items from these chests and shops that are posted around the planet for some reason to give you a leg up in mercilessly murdering these aliens that are actually just in their natural habitat. Now I'm gonna be honest, I was pretty critical of the roguelike genre in my Enter the Gungeon video. And that's just because whenever a roguelike is bad, it's really, really bad. One of the most important aspects of the roguelike is a sense of momentum throughout the entire run. Gameplay elements have to have a nice flow to them, whether you're collecting items, exploring the terrain, or having combat with some of the enemies. And this flow is very important to make these hour-long runs seem engaging. And you know what? I'd say Risk of Rain 1 flows about as nicely as my constipated uncle. The character moves so incredibly slow. And this is a big problem because these maps are just ginormous. There's so much to explore. And it's not like exploration is optional either. These items that I mentioned before, these things are scattered throughout the entire map, and you're gonna have to search every single crack and crevice to be able to find all of them. Not only does this poor design choice affect exploration, but it also majorly affects the combat as well. The optimal mode of combat is very boring and stale. You are basically just doing the exact same thing over and over again. This is what the combat consists of for the base character. You run away, you turn around, you shoot at the guys chasing you for a bit, they get to you, you run away again, rinse and repeat over and over again until that whole giant mob of enemies is destroyed. If you try to do anything else, if you try to be creative in your combat style in any way, you will die. Now, I would say that there are some items out there that do help with this a little bit, like a double jump and faster movement speed. But all in all, that previous description is really what every combat interaction devolves to. Especially in the later levels, whenever these enemies are just popping out faster than a preteen's acne. Not to mention, there are some enemies that are so unsatisfying to kill. This jellyfish, you could literally look at him for about a minute and you can't do anything about it. He takes forever to get down there. And once he finally does, you are unable to kill him until he's already inside of you. I hate it when it's almost impossible for me to kill an enemy before he hits me. That is just so unsatisfying. It's not just the jellyfish that take forever to kill. Every enemy in the game has way too much health. You could use every single one of your skills on this stone guy, and he still won't go down. To top it all off, there are these ending boss battles to each level that suck humongous Lemurian balls. So basically, to end each one of these levels, you have to find this impossibly hard to find teleporter. And once you activate it, the game spawns a boss that you have to take out before you can enter to the next section. And there are some bosses that are almost impossible to beat if you don't cheese them out for minutes at a time. Yes, there are some glaring problems. But you could forgive a few things like slow movement speed and higher enemy healths just based off the fact that they wanted a slower experience, right? But the thing is, this game launched a ballista straight into their foot with this difficulty design. So basically how the difficulty works in this game is that when you first spawn on the first level, the difficulty is near 0, right? But the longer that you play, the harder it gets. This timer up here in the top corner, the farther it gets, the harder the enemies get, and the more that they spawn. And I'm gonna be honest, that's a pretty cool idea for a roguelike. It gives you this nice sense of urgency that forces you to try and not waste as much time as possible. But guess what? The aforementioned criticisms of a slow character and hard to kill enemies become infinitely more frustrating once you realize that that actually impacts how hard the game is getting. The gameplay becomes very disheartening. This game just feels like an addict counselor and how it keeps you from having any fun whatsoever. Not to mention the fact that there are some extremely poor design choices in the end of these levels. Oh wow, howdy do, that was a tough battle. I'm glad that I was able to come out of that with my life. Well, alrighty then, well with the boss dead, it's time to leave now, up to do. Oh wait, what's this? You have got to be joking. Oh no, good viewer, your eyes are most certainly not deceiving you right now. This game forces you to waste your precious ticking minutes to kill each individual enemy that spawned during each boss battle. Oh, also, you remember those enemies you skipped before because you didn't feel bothered to partake in the combat of this game? Well, they're coming back to bite you harder than I'm wanting to bite whoever made this decision. So yeah, this game is a little frustrating. I'm not gonna lie. But you know what these guys over at Hopoo did? They took the criticism of this first game. They examined exactly what was wrong with it and what needed to be fixed. And they worked tirelessly to try and make a game that was much better than the first. And you know what they made? They made Risk of Rain 2. Now I'm gonna go ahead and slap you with some honesty here and say that Risk of Rain 2 is pretty much just a carbon copy of the first game, but infinitely better in every single possible way. The switch from a 2D space to a 3D space just fixes so much that was broken about the first game. It's so freeing to be able to move my mouse in a direction that I want to face and shoot my enemies at, instead of being confined to only being able to shoot in 2 directions. And this allows me to be much more creative in my playstyle while I'm taking on these huge clumps of enemies. I could jump up into the air and rain down arrows of death upon my enemies and then use a blink to reposition myself so that I continue flinging arrows. I can use my supersonic speed to bash into a cluster of enemies while releasing my cluster bombs and begin spraying them with my nail gun, literally. Now, some of these abilities are specifically designed to make you more mobile while you're traversing the world and combating enemies, and the original game had these boosts in mobility as well, but they feel so much more satisfying this go around when they actually make you feel like you're moving more. Take a look at this puny little virgin commando in the first game, and watch this. He's about to do something really cute. Just watch. Oh my gosh, okay, wait, hold on, that was, yeah, I know, everyone laughed, yeah, that was pretty funny. It's pretty pathetic if you ask me. Now how about we move over to the Chad Risk of Rain 2 commando? Oh yes, oh my gosh, bravo. Bravo, good sir. That man just felt like he traversed an entire football field with that movement ability. You see what I mean? Now, these 3D environments that were created for this second game are arguably just as big as the first game, but you can actually explore them without too much penalty. Because yes, this game does still have that difficulty mechanic, you know, the one I was incessantly bashing with my hateful words? But I am so glad that they made the decision to keep it, because it made me realize how genius a system like this is when it's actually in a good game. That clock never stops ticking, and those enemies are getting stronger and more of them are coming out of the ground. But the game makes sure that if you are skillful enough, you can progress just as fast as the wildlife does. The sense of urgency given from that design choice is tangible. As soon as you land on that first planet, the game grabs you and it does not let go. Also, the items, I completely forgot the first game had these items as well, but then again, that was in a terrible game. My experience in this series is just so incredibly odd. In the first game, I'm realizing the vast amount of wasted potential, and it honestly kind of irritates me and makes me a little bit sad. But then the second game rolls around and Santa Claus has come early, because this, my friends, is a fantastic game where every single wasted opportunity from the first is refined and polished to almost perfection. And one of these elements is the items, because who man, do these things synergize with each other better than PB&J. To be fair, most of the items' designs and mechanics are basically copy and pasted from the first game. But now that I'm not held back by restrictive movement and combat, I actually notice it a lot more. Take a gander at this little item over here. Oh wow, hey, would you look at that? All of my attacks explode? Wow, that's pretty neat. I would love to have that while extinguishing this entire ecosystem. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, it's alright. It's very nice to have lots of boom booms where I point the cursor, but it's missing something. Something important. Oh, what's this? Faster attack speed. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that might work. Taste explosion, you innocent scum! Or, what we could do is take some of these movement buffs and string them together a little bit. So we got this item right here that propels you a little bit through the air when you jump, and we got this item right over here that gives you a double jump. So how about we just squish these two things together, combined with our movement ability as the commando, jump, double jump, commando roll. Holy crap, do not knock on my door with your inferior peasant brains because my galaxy brain can only take in so much information at once. Yeah, so progression doesn't just feel like a couple of numbers going up in your stats menu. It actually feels like you're unlocking more abilities and gaining more and more options on how you tackle this alien world. There are also just so many tiny little minuscule tweaks that drastically improve the entire game. The character is always front and center, so you never get confused with excessive visual noise. The character has a sprint option, which helps you traverse the land even more when your movement ability is recharging. Oh, and would you look at that? I can actually leave now after killing the boss instead of wasting my precious time increasing the difficulty and killing every single one of the boss's little minions. Now, even though there are still a few problems bleeding in from the first game, like repetitive gameplay and unnecessary elements like turrets and drones that follow you around, it's still a drastic improvement that is serving as one of the best anime redemption arcs I have ever seen in my entire life. And it has quickly become one of my favorite roguelikes of all time.